All right, so we're live here back. Welcome to from Katrina the Corona Poor People Solutions versus government solutions to COVID-19 and the virus of poverty. A special Zoom series sponsored by Poor People Revolution Radio. Poor People Radio broadcast live Tuesday 6 until 9 PST and Thursday 4 through 7 on www.poormagazine.org/radio or on the dial in Oakland at 96.1 FM. All of these Zoom broadcasts are available at PoorNewsNetwork channel on YouTube. And I am the stuck-in Black crippled. And who's this?
I'm that poverty scholar. Anti-social workers and case manglers call me crazy, lazy, dumb, and a bum, because my knowledge don't come from the institution. Yeah, I'm that poverty scholar, that houseless mama, that houseless daughter, all those people you don't want to see, never want to be, look away from me. What you gonna do, arrest me? And welcome to PNN, not CNN, people. This is from Katrina to Corona. And tonight we looking at PeoplesCages. Now I want to repeat that again. I did say people and cages in the same word. From occupied Yalamu, that's San Francisco, Ohlone, Lashawnland, to occupied Seminole territory, AKA what the colonizers call St. Petersburg, Florida, and beyond.
¿Qué pasa, raza? What's up, folks? Muteado silencio. We didn't cross the border crossed us. Nosotros no cruzamos la frontera nos cruzó a nosotros. Yes, muteado silencio, presente y me alegro. To ground us today, why we're doing this series, will be begin with some of the words of wisdom from the elder Malik Rahim, frontline revolutionary liberator, organized and self-determined poverty scholar from New Orleans, where Hurricane Katrina happened.
As a people in the aftermath of Katrina, it wouldn't have had a Black Lives Matter or movement. It wouldn't have been a need for that. It wouldn't have been a Jenner. It wouldn't have been a Ferguson.
Right.
Because we could have ended it right here.
That's right.
But because we allow for whatever compensation some of us receive, we allowed some of the blatantness, the most blatant racism that ever happened in this country. That happened here and went unattested.
That's right.
You know, I mean, right now there's never been a member of the vigilantes that roam these streets to be arrested for anything. Most people forgot that Gretna closed their borders to blacks and wouldn't allow blacks into Gretna. You dig? And most people don't even want to hear about how Bush knew that the levee was being breached and they didn't warn nobody. You know, nobody wanted to hear this.
Right.
But see, now we are under a person that's worse than Bush. You dig? We're on a person that I would call Bush with steroids.
Right.
And we are still called ill prepared.
Right.
Okay, so to watch any of the powerful interview with Malik, go to PoorNewsNetwork on YouTube. We are also joined tonight by fellow land liberator co-host from Homefulness and Poor Magazine, D. Allen.
No nonprofit organizer can speak for the Po. No college professor can speak for the Po. I could speak for the Pope because I'm on the Pope. Count my head, I'm on the broke on this block. You see me, cause I own less than you. You diss me, these slums, mine. Frustration, mine. This thirst, mine. Starvation, mine. These wants, mine. These tears, mine. Displacement, fears, mine. They're with me all the time. No president is mine, and neither is his government. They strip represent the class hate I resent. I don't count the institutions of power. I don't count to a racist coward. Picture me not once worshiping they flag, as long continue to deny its slag.
Oh.
D. Allen, D.P. Soapland, California.
Come on, D.
Whee! Poets in the house, land liberators. So again, tonight's topic is people cages, which is a terrifying concept. We're not making light of that at all. That's why we're dedicating tonight. More caging of poor people under Corona cover. We are blessed to have some powerful guests on tonight to break down what this even means, including revolutionary liberator, theologist, Pastor Bruce Wright from Refuge Ministries in occupied Seminole territory and Tennessee, and the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign. As well, we are supposed to be joined by Rupa Maria, who is a revolutionary doctor healer from Do No Harm.
Dr. Rupa is in the house.
As well, we're supposed to be joined by Crystal Rose Sanchez from the Homeless Union and Sack Soup up in that occupied territory where they still sweeping houseless folk. And similarly, a powerful land liberator and another witness of the people cages with myself, Auntie Francis Tiburcio, and Leroy Moore, Mr. D. Allen, who we just heard from, who when we actually went out to occupied Seminole territory to share the message and medicine of the Poverty Scholarship book. Yeah, that's right. Us poor people have theory. What? It's called Poverty Scholarship. Poor people led theory across Mama Earth. So as we always do, we share with our fellow houseless scholars, and we're blessed to be in St. Petersburg and witness with our own eyes that violence, that colonial violence, that anti-poor people violence that happens every day in this occupied land with or without a coronavirus. So we're going to watch a few of the coverage that we had when we went out there, and then we're going to hear from Pastor Wright and Brother D and some others.
You don't let it in. Why?
Tell us what you're seeing.
I said one guy trying to get in there, and guard there, they're staying in there, they're looking at him. And Mr. White is still talking and talking.
Yeah, we're looking to get the the cage that they put up right next to the art museum, which is nothing less than a cage. With about, what is that, like an 8-9 foot fence?
I say, yeah, like 7, 8.
Anyway, they say it's sanctuary, but we were fine before they put it up, so I don't understand what they mean by sanctuary, but I do know it's a cage.
Sure.
You don't let it in.
Seeing?
I say,
yeah.
what do you think so?
I think it's like martial law. They're just trying to condition us.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Camp up in Clearwater that's called Safe Harbor. We call it, unsafe harbor. And then we have a tent city run by Catholic Charities that we call Guantanamo Clearwater.
One more time, Dee, can you tell people what we just saw?
We just saw people behind chain link fences, fenced in like prisoners or POWs from some war.
Francis, any thoughts? As poverty scholars, this is too fucking much, man. This is the first look we had from people. That's what they want us all to be in. Yep.
This is what they want to do.
Yep.
So not only are they caging immigrants that are coming to this country and children, they're caging homeless folks. So it's just a matter of time before they cage anybody that's undesirable, period. As far as the powers that be and how they feel.
You already know.
What are we doing now?
Well, we were just talking about Guantanamo St. Pete.
Yeah, they're saying they're going to take the benches out of there.
What?
They're going to take the benches out of there because they're tired of people arguing about claiming benches, and they're going to make everybody sleep on the ground. And there's not going to be any more benches.
That shit. Leroy, is it you next to introduce?
No, it's Bruce.
Oh yeah, Bruce. So we're blessed to have Bruce Wright, Refuge Ministries, from Tampa Bay, from Tennessee, and the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, who you heard from, a powerful revolutionary and liberator. Bruce, can you tell us about the roots of these freaky fucking people cages?
Well, these ideas were the brainchild. I don't even know if I want to use that word. I don't even want to use the word child because that's insulting children. I don't know what to call this guy. I know what the homeless have called him. His name is Dr. Marvit, and he's not really a doctor, except in the fashion of maybe Nazi Germany, because the homeless folks have dubbed him the Joseph Mengele of the homeless.
Angel of
And for those who don't know, historically, Joseph Mengele was the doctor who experimented on not only Jewish folks during World War II, but gypsies and homeless folks and dissidents. And this guy has become the go-to person for cities across the country. And in fact, he's an advisor now to the Orange Julius Caesar. I won't call him anything else but that. And he is the architect of these big box kind of facilities. And there's 3 manifestations of it that were amongst the experiments started in St. Pete. It's been there for a long time. It made news in the Tampa Bay Times and the Huffington Post and Democracy Now! And some other outlets, but nothing was ever done about it. There are 3 facilities that they have in Pinellas County, Florida, which is part of Tampa Bay, Florida, as you mentioned, the land of Seminole people. And those facilities include what's called the safe harbor, which is neither safe nor a harbor, except maybe a harbor for criminals. And I don't mean the folks in it, but the folks running it. It is run by the sheriff's department. It's next to the jail, and it is the largest homeless shelter in the Bay Area. Now, Tampa Bay Area has, and the other Bay Area, I should say.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay Area has 25,000 homeless that we know of, but it's much higher than that. A lot of folks don't want to participate in those census things because it's used to cause them harm rather than help them, at least in my opinion. And that safe harbor is run by jail guards, same food as the jail, and de facto is a jail, even though they don't have bars. If you misbehave, they put you out in a caged area. Then we have St. Vincent de Paul, another big box charity, part of the nonprofit industrial complex that runs what is called the cage, which you guys witnessed in that video. The cage is essentially, I would say it's about 15 feet wide and about 80 feet long, and they put more than 100 folks, homeless folks, in there. And it's completely surrounded as a cage. And it is where the police force homeless folks to go if they can't get them up all the way to Clearwater. And then we have what I call, and you heard me call it in the video, Guantanamo, Tampa Bay. And that is the tent city run by Catholic Charities. And the tent city run by Catholic Charities, again, big box charity, no autonomy or say-so with any of these facilities, by folks who are houseless, by folks who are experiencing homelessness. They have no autonomy or say. They have rules they have to follow. And most of the time, those rules are treating them as less than human. These things existed years prior to what we're seeing now. They were amongst experiments that were put in place by people that wanted to find ways to warehouse those experiencing homelessness. and they are now the model that's used by cities across the country. And let's be clear here, Tampa Bay is run by Democrats.
Yep.
As you guys know, in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area, again run by Democrats, supposed liberal cities. And what we're seeing is the libertards are as awful and horrible as any conservative. And in fact, neoliberalism is not only something that's colonizing around the world, it's colonizing within our own so-called country here. And it's definitely something that we resist, that we fight, that we believe the answer is houses, places to live, not cages.
Thank you.
But this is what's happening. And it was happening prior to COVID-19. Now it's been put on steroids.
Yeah.
And everywhere, this is the go-to model for not only so-called undocumented folks that are crossing the border, and not only for those who are part of the prison industrial complex and homeless folks, but now newly homeless folks, amongst the 35 million now that are unemployed, are probably going to be a part of that future. And they have it already ready, folks. You know, FEMA. I don't know why they give it such a pleasant name, Federal Emergency Management Association, or whatever it is. It's more like federal mismanagement, or worse, I would say, prisons. And you know, I was so glad you showed that video by Malik. He's a good friend of ours and part of our Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign and my organization, Refuge. I was with him during Katrina when that happened 15 years ago. And it was so true, everything he said. It was unbelievable. And you had not only police from every jurisdiction in the country, not only National Guard, but you had 82nd Airborne, fresh from fighting in Iraq in Fallujah, marching the streets, fully armed, not rubber bullets, fully armed. And this is what we're seeing. This is the future of what the neocon, neoliberal conspiracy together wants, whether it's the Orange Julius Caesar or Dixiecrat Joe, it doesn't matter. Either one of them, folks. And I use the word Dixiecrat because I'm from the South and we know what Dixiecrats were. I live 15 minutes away from where the Ku Klux Klan started in Pulaski, Tennessee. So it is a reality, unfortunately.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Next, we're going to have D. Allen back up to share his poem. So D. Allen from Homefulness.
And poets.
Reminds me of writing stuff.
Okay.
The People Cage. CARE for the homeless. On some street in St. Pete looks like a cage for people. An open-air holding cell, south of heaven, east side of hell. A jailhouse with a dusky ceiling full of stars. Black wrought iron bars surrounds the transient's reality. Across the street from a trailer, SWAT monitors enclosed activity. Crouching low, pacing around, 9-hour lockdown. It was animals that placed homeless ones in captivity, but no sins, away from palm trees and passers-by. A step up from sidewalk tent snatching. Public safety for rich newcomers on some street in St. Pete looks like a cage for people. Guantanamo Bay outside. And that was called The People Cage for Bruce and Barbara Wright.
And I don't know if you want to add anything about what you saw. Dee is one of the witnesses, one of the contingent of poverty scholars who went out there.
Sure enough, like I mentioned in the poem, SWAT does put a watch on the Vincent Depaul Care Center, where the People Cage outside is located. And they have this trailer that monitors the internees' every single move, even even those little interactions like trying to claim a bench and trying to fight over it and such.
Yeah.
And this was before they made the move to remove the benches completely and make everybody lie on the ground. Yeah, what I witnessed was disgusting. Yeah. And it really did look like a prisoner of war camp where internees are brought in by some armed enemy force in some war. Yeah. It was heartbreaking.
Thank you.
And this is the model they want to import. This is the model they've already imported into San Francisco, only it's a much bigger people cage than the one in St. Petersburg a year ago.
That's right. First of all, thank you, Dee, for your powerful words, and also thank you, Bruce. I just want to lift up again that, you know, the point of From Katrina to Corona series that me and Leroy have been doing, and all of us Homefulness land liberators, is because us poor people, us houseless people, we have our own solutions. We do not have to be cattled and contained, but sadly, because we're also colonized by the trauma of poverty, which happened a whole hell of a lot longer, and colonization than any COVID-19 virus. We say the virus of poverty. So I just want to be clear, is because we're so caught in that cycle of scarcity and violence and colonial virus, we get cattled and contained easily. And these are the other ways in which part of the point of us even holding these sessions, but also the cultural work we do, which we're going to be doing tomorrow. But without further ado, we have a revolutionary doctor, Dr. Rupa, who's also a liberator and part of the Do No Harm Coalition, and has been standing with us, houseless folks, demanding these hoarded hotel rooms be released. Which, you know, the mayor is just parsing out in little amounts, right? As little as she can, with all these scarcity model rules and jail cells models, as we heard from the Street Watch LA folks a couple of weeks ago. So all that to say, let's bring in beautiful sister Rupa.
I don't think she's here.
Oh, she's not there?
No, I'm here. I got thrown off.
Okay.
Oh,
Dr. Rupa's in the house.
Hey, Rupa.
hey, Rupa.
Tell us the medical implications of this, the people case.
Yes. First of all, it's so good to see your beautiful half faces, some of you. I love you all, and thank you for the amazing and inspiring work that you do. I have been shocked, really shocked. I mean, I for years as a physician where I work at UCSF in the hospital, we are told we have to discharge patients to the streets who are unhoused after they are done with their hospitalization, after they feel well enough to leave. For years, I will invent reasons why I just can't do that. I'll look for something that, you know, I just need to check on this, or maybe we should check on that. And I usually just delay the process as much as I can until we can try to find a better solution, or until the social workers get their superiors to call me and I get in trouble. And so it's just been really impactful for not just our unhoused folks, but we're now starting to see the erosion of our healthcare workers' mental health, because the idea of discharging a person to the streets, which is what our solution is right now in the Bay Area, especially San Francisco where I work, is horrific. It's criminal. When people are in the streets of San Francisco, when they don't have access to a safe private room with a private bathroom, which is what everyone needs, not just for COVID, but in general, just the access to private accommodations that are dignified. I worry about the health impacts. Okay, and the reasons are, number one, we see viral shedding of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in feces. And we see it more prominently than we did with the cousins of this virus, COVID, which are MERS, which is another coronavirus that spread that was very also deadly. That virus, we saw low levels in the stool, in the bowel movement, because they thought that it was coming in your respiratory secretions, you'd swallow it, and then it would end up in your stool. But we're seeing much higher levels in the feces now, which implies that it's actually replicating in the gastrointestinal system. And some people are not presenting to the hospital or to medical help with the typical fever and cough or shortness of breath and chest pain, but instead are presenting with this other syndrome of more gastrointestinal, like diarrhea for several days or weeks, with fatigue, with body aches, with headaches, with redness of your eyes known as conjunctivitis. And so we don't know when someone does have a bowel movement, if they have to relieve themselves on the street because we don't have adequate access to restrooms for our unhoused people in San Francisco, if they have to, relieve themselves in a bag and throw it in a trash can, which we spoke to several youth who are having to do, if they have to relieve themselves in shared public settings, that is not safe in the midst of a pandemic. That is just not acceptable. And so what shocks me is hearing these doctors I respect in the Department of Public Health get up in front of the microphone, get up in front of these hearings, and basically tell us we have two standards of public health in San Francisco. We have a standard for housed people, and we have a standard for unhoused people. Why this is criminal is because unhoused folks are more likely to first of all, contract the virus because of living in more closer accommodations or in accommodations where they don't have private restrooms and the ability to wash hands or wash themselves as much as needed. But then when unhoused people get sick with COVID, they're more likely to die, so up to 2 to 4 times the mortality rate. What is also shocking to me is that a disproportionate number of our unhoused folks across the land, but especially in San Francisco, are Black, brown, and Indigenous. And so this is a racial justice issue. This is a health justice issue. This is exposing the violence of our city. And while that violence has been chronically impacting poor people for years, now we're also seeing it impact the healthcare workers, where Ian Carrier died after being discharged from my hospital, UCSF. He wasn't offered a hotel room. And there were 2,000 vacant rooms. They're still sitting vacant in San Francisco that we're already paying for. They're just sitting there vacant because the mayor is arguing that, we just don't have enough resources to adequately staff or adequately take care of people, which, I'm sure we can be inspired to find the resources to do that. We have community-based organizations who worked with poor and unhoused people who are willing to step up and assist. And we also have a lot of people who actually don't need that much. They just need shelter. And so the fact that they have put the most medically needy people in hotels and then been like, oh, well, we need so much support, that's disingenuous, because most people on the streets don't need a lot of medical help. They need shelter. They need housing. And so the other last thing I wanted to mention is that because of the chronic exposure to stress of poor and unhoused people, and also minorities, those of us who face racial discrimination and class discrimination, the body internalizes that in stress in our cells, in our immune system, and because of that, the body ages much faster. And so San Francisco, when they first issued their recommendations of people over 60 going into hotel rooms, it made no sense, and it showed that they weren't actually basing this on science, or a medically indicated plan, because the body of a 40-year-old, of someone who's been on the streets for a while, can look and act and behave like the body of a 60-year-old. And so they should have been pushing that age limit way low. They should have just been getting everybody into, or offering everyone the opportunity to be in a hotel, and not in a hotel that is then guarded and where people are incarcerated in hotels, but a place where people are offered a shelter like any other human being. So we will continue as doctors to push, and health workers to push this issue with the city, and to demand the creation of a culture of care of all people, to demand that there's one standard of public health that's based on medically indicated facts, not politically motivated fiction, and to also expose that the violence of the Trump administration, that mentality, it's not just Trump. It's London Breed is exhibiting that same kind of violence here in San Francisco.
No
It's
doubt.
important. It's important to name that, because just because she's Black and female,
Right.
she's not continuing that same violence.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for me from like the medical perspective that folks have?
We're gonna hear from one more speaker. I know you might not be able to stay on, but we
Okay.
have to just open it up.
Okay.
We love you.
I love you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Rupa.
we love you, Rupa. And
Thank you, Rupa.
I just want to tell people, Do No Harm Coalition is a badass group of conscious
Yes.
medical professionals. But I want to call in another sister in the struggle, a poverty scholar who's on the front line every day in this Occupy America KKK with these same kinds of sweeps and criminalizing and belonging theft. Because guess what? Us Poor Magazine family, we're in, as we always are, in the Mission and the TL on Friday, and they're still sweeping people in the Mission, which is why we call the TL containment zone, because it's the only place where right now, theoretically, they're not sweeping. And I mean sweeping, I mean taking our shit, poor people's stuff. That's what I mean. Hygienic metaphors about poor people's bodies and lives. So, Crystal Rose Sanchez, we love you, from the Homeless Union, from Sack Soup. Come on in, fam, if you're there. I don't know if she's there. Are we there? Is she there?
She's there.
Okay.
It keeps muting me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
buddy.
right. I'm here.
Tell us what's going on in Sac right now and a little bit about what's up.
It's a hot mess. And actually, everything that Bruce said is happening here on steroids. And then also what Dr. Rupa was saying, we have medical teams out in the encampments at this point, and it's been a huge battle. Like, even our medical teams are standing up. We have students from UC Davis. We have a doctor from UC Davis. We have Cal North State West students. We have about 30 students and doctors in the encampments right now, covering a grassroots effort because we had no help, I mean, at this point. And what those two just basically said, that's what's happening here in Sacramento. The hotels are a hot mess. We do have some people being placed in them, not quick enough. We've had exposed folks that are being dispersed into town every day, every morning. That's huge. City Hall, they have what's the sit light ordinance, and what they do is every single morning at 6 a.m. they disperse people to Midtown. We've had a COVID positive there. They did remove the person who was tested positive. However, they are sending it's about 70 to 90 people a day throughout our downtown. The sweeps are constant. They never stop. It's been ongoing. So what we've done is we have sidestepped the government because we continually fight with them. We continually ask. We've done everything appropriately. 4.5 weeks ago, we sent a cease and desist to our mayor, which is Mayor Steinberg, who happens to be the co-chair of the Homeless Task Force for all of California. We sent a cease and desist to him. We told them that he had 24 hours to write a public statement saying that all sweeps would cease and desist. If he didn't, that we would turn him in. And so what happened was of course, we didn't get nothing. That's how they work. We didn't receive any information, so we turned them into the Attorney General, to the Department of Justice, to the Public Health Department. The very next morning, we received a letter from the city attorneys, and what they claimed to us was that no law enforcement was moving anybody, which we know is not true. We get videos daily from folks in the camps.
Thank you.
And what we did was we set SAC B. We sent them there at 6 a.m. in the morning. We said, hey, we got your story. And so they went there, they caught it very next morning. Police, no masks, closer than 6 feet proximity, shoving people out. Again, this is we know of an exposed person in this area. And then they dispersed them. So we've been going rounds and rounds. We did call the city attorney out basically on her fraudulent comments. And we then received another letter, which then was CC'd to Gavin Newsom and everybody else, saying, well, since you guys are collecting evidence on us, this is what we're doing, and we've developed this COVID response team. Well, this COVID response team is us. They don't seem to get that picture. The COVID response team involves volunteers. So we have 150 volunteers through SAC Soup and Sacramento Homeless Union, and we're out serving food. We serve food every day. We serve thousands of meals a day. So they're co-opting basically everything that we've done. So then they also say, well, we have 28 medical students, which are the UC Davis students. It's just going in circles. And like what Bruce was saying about these encampments and these cages, I did report to Tiny a long time ago about our winter triage center. It did have razor wire all across the top of it. Wow. Unlivable condition.
Holy people.
88
No, go ahead.
Yeah, ADA compliance issues. Basically, the ADA issues were that we had animals who are service animals. We had people with epilepsy who need their dogs to sleep on top of them or next to them to, be aware of a seizure. They ended up placing all these animals in cages. They would not allow them to come in with anything. There was a check-in. And here's the big thing, and this is where they're going with everybody's shelter nationally. They're doing this. The only way into the shelter was through police escort. So even an unhoused person who, has no criminal record is having to get in the back of a cop car, be humiliated to be going into these shelters. And it's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Mr. Marbut also did, that was our big shelter thing prior to COVID-19 was they were trying to introduce Haven of Hope here in Sacramento. And again, what we're seeing is these razor wire in place shelters, pop-up sprung tents, 100 people in a tent, no protocol, no procedures, no realistic triaging. So you're placing sick people with healthy people, you're placing children with people that have a registered sex offender status. We've got just a hot mess of things going on. And Steinberg has a huge following when it comes to different cities throughout California because he is that co-chair. A lot of people are listening to him and it's not going real good.
Yeah. Thank you, Krista. We love you, bruh. So beautiful. And Sac Soup is a powerful movement as well as Homeless Union, and you're on the front line as a formerly houseless mama yourself. Was lifting that up. I just want to say, because we're going to open it up to questions and comments. I know we have some comments, but I just want to put out there too that, again, one of the things that Bruce said in the very beginning, and it's really important to lift up, we know that the nonprofit industrial complex works hand in glove with these systems, with these criminalizing systems. It's not like it's one and the other. They're actually together. And one of the things we brought out with the Ugly Laws book, Susan Schweik, and the Poverty Scholarship book, and the work that Leroy and myself do is about the connections, the slimy, slippery slope between, as Bruce called it, also the neocons and the neoliberalism that actually where this piece I just wrote, where, the saviors become unsafe, right? We know that that's actually how it can happen, because those folks who have garnered all that government dough, and as Malik pointed out, who take that dirty money, and shuttle in this kind of crap. Anyway, so I just want to lift that up. But Leroy, let me turn it back to you and we'll open it up, folks who have.
Yeah, so we're going to open it up with questions. I'm going to unmute everybody. Please, let's talk one at a time so we can get everybody on. So I'm going to unmute everybody, okay?
And then you go to you. Dee has a question, but let's defer to if there's any guests who hasn't spoken. Anybody has a question, that's fine. If not, we'll talk.
I don't have a question so much as a comment. Hi, Tiny.
Hey, Samsara, we love you. Thanks
I love you too. Love you back. I was very, again, very powerfully moved by everything that everybody has shared. And I was particularly thrilled. I hadn't met the doctor who was on early. I don't know if she's still on the line. I was just really happy to see an MD in the struggle with the people in that way. My work is around pregnant mamas and pregnant people. And there is a full-scale attack on our pregnant people in this community as well as other communities, whether they are housed or unhoused. Doctors are having a great time doing all these inductions, and C-sections are climbing, and doulas cannot be present in the room with their client to help defray this pain to the community. After like months of all these articles coming out talking about how great doulas were, then all of a sudden with this magic virus, we're no longer essential.
Wow.
But postpartum doulas are essential because, you know, rich white folks don't want to take care of their own newborns.
That part.
Yeah.
So we can't have that.
Thank you.
But mamas of any color, they need to be shepherded down the road where they can get as much medication as possible and potentially C-sections. And you know, we already are in the country that has the worst mortality for mamas and babies than any other industrialized country. That's already true. It's getting worse. So I want to reach out to that coalition because we need to get doulas back in the birth room in this state. It's so.
Can I respond to that? I think that's a really important point. This is Rupa. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, thank you for your work. So there is a doctor I know who's a dear friend and very interested in these issues who works at San Francisco General. Her name is Dr. Deborah Cohen. And she works very closely with several Black OBGYN residents and doulas and midwives, at San Francisco General. There's, I think, one Black midwife who is like a long-term player at San Francisco General. So I can, if Tiny, maybe you could put us in touch, I can get you in touch with her so you can work on this really important piece of advocacy.
I would really love that support. Thank you so much. We have a campaign going on right now, having folks call the governor to be like, excuse me, doulas are essential. That's our hashtag, doulas are essential. So.
Okay, well, definitely.
Well, Dr. Deb also believes that as an OBGYN, she knows the roles. She actually was my doula with my baby, my last baby. And so she would be a great advocate to have MDs in there with you.
Ashe. We'll get you guys in touch. And I love that we're actually collecting up. That's beautiful. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
That's the magic. Anyone else? I want to give it a floor to Dee because he had a question. Go ahead, Dee.
Actually, I have two questions split between two of the guests. First one is addressed to Dr. Rupa. When did the Do No Harm Coalition start? How did it get started?
We started in 2016 when I saw 5 people on the doorstep of the Mission Police Department protesting the police killings. I was actually on my way to ask the Vice Chancellor of UCSF to draft a letter to the city of San Francisco to deplore the racist, violent killings of brown and Black people in our city, because we are the second largest employer in San Francisco. And I wanted them to have the framework that it's in our community. These are our people who are being shot by the police. And I sat there and I literally cried. I cried in front of the Vice Chancellor asking him to do this, to just write this letter. And he refused to and said it was too political. And I realized that was that's when I went to go introduce myself to the Frisco 5 who were on hunger strike. And I offered my service to accompany them as a physician in their hunger strike so that their bodies would not be assaulted by the state should they become unconscious in their political struggle. And that was the beginning of like this huge phase of my life where my work in music, I'm also a musician, who's been studying social movements and going to different places around the world with my band to work closely with music and movements where the fusing of my understanding of the body social, that our bodies are suffering because of our social conditions. Our bodies are not sick themselves, they're becoming sick. The disease is in the social system. And so I want to be using my time and skills and energy as a physician to heal the system so that our bodies can be healthy. And so it came out of the Do No Harm Coalition, and amazingly those 5 people trusted me because they knew me as a musician. 2 of them knew me through the music scene, and they're like, oh no, she's cool. I know her through the music. And so that was the beginning of the Do No Harm Coalition. Then all these med students saw me out there and they're like, can we help you? And now we're over 500 doctors, nurses, physical therapists, dentists, students, and growing. And people are now asking from around the country, I want to start one of these here. My colleagues at UCSF, just as of this week, they've started a social medicine corps, which has become a grotesque form of medical voyeurism to study social disparities. And I asked the social medicine corps, can we please take a pledge to refuse to discharge patients to the street unless we have safe housing for them in the midst of a pandemic? And they basically refused to. They refused to do that. And it showed me, and I responded to them in a very thoughtful email. You know, I thanked them for their consideration, and I said, we should be asking ourselves what the use of a social medicine corps is. What is the purpose of this? Is it purely academic? And when does it become more violence? If we're studying the effects of these violences on people's bodies without actually ameliorating them. And so I have a core of women doctors at UCSF who I work with. I went back and talked to them, and they said, that was bullshit. You need to take them on and demand your position as a leader of health in this regard. And so I've gone back and I've done that, and I'm going to actually agitate for more of my official role as a physician, scholar, academic doctor, to be able to influence things, because I think it's critical.
Wait 1 second. Thank you, Rupa. Is there anyone else who has a question before we give the floor to a second question?
I just have a really quick question, actually, for
Yes.
Dr. Rupa. Is there any sort of, I don't want to say like movement, but is there anything that you're trying to do statewide or nationally, the patient dumping? Because that is major in Sacramento. We have 11,000 on the streets, and they drop them off centrally in one location. And it's generally long-term senior citizens who have, ended up, 1 or 2 or 3 months into the hospital, losing their apartments, losing their things. And then of course they can't make that 2.5 times the rent to find a new place, and then they become long-term homeless. And that's something major that we're dealing with. And I would be totally interested in pushing something like that here in Sacramento.
Well, that is so tragic. No, we're not working on that right now per se. We are working with groups. We have a whole campaign on long-term housing, but this housing insecurity issue is a passion of many of our members. And if you send me an email to admin@donoharmcoalition.org, I can make sure that one of our members can partner on that, because this is something that is of critical importance.
Right on.
There was a law passed, SB 1152 in 2018, that was actually to prevent this exact sort of thing. You might want to see if you can use that law that's actually on the books. It was started being effective last year, to bring some lawsuits against these hospitals.
Yeah, but they don't follow it. They keep on doing it. So
No,
yeah,
it's something that Crip Hop Nation and Poor Magazine has been fighting for years. And again, bringing in the whole aspect of the violence, the elder abuse of eviction itself. We know now that these nursing homes, these elder ghettos, are kicking out their folks, and or people are getting sick inside of them. And we also teach on, just the violence of these elder ghettos in the first place. Let me just ask any other questions before I turn it back to, I wanted to ask Bruce a question too, but any other questions for the audience from folks? Okay. Go ahead, Dee, your second question.
My second question is addressed to Crystal Rose Sanchez.
Okay, go ahead.
Is she still there?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Crystal, when did those razor wire enclosures get put in Sacramento? And how many tents are they holding in?
So they're not, so basically what it is get ready to grab your seats because you're gonna love this one. So basically this was last year. It has since been closed down. It was a warehouse that they were placed in with cots. And at first it served 200 people going in through this razor wire, going past a desk, having all their belongings taken away, brought in by the police. Here's the kicker, which pisses everybody off, including me, and I can't even fathom this, and this is what they're still doing. The poverty campaign all the way around. It was $4,000 a month per person to be in this place with no plumbing.
What?
Yeah, no plumbing. and all these other things. When this closed down, because it closed down about a year ago, when it closed down, the owner of the actual building came forward to stop another pop-up shelter from being built at Cal Expo. And his reasoning behind that was because there was a lot of bad business and a lot of bad deals that happened. They didn't treat the people right. And those people now that were in that all live in a cul-de-sac in front of it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really bad. Bed bugs, the third week into it, somebody died in it. I mean, it was horrible.
Wow. Wow. I do want to say too, for people who don't know, because you may not, is that, if you came in late, you didn't see the beginning, but the PeoplesCages in Florida that myself and Dee and Auntie Frances witnessed, thanks to Bruce and Pastor GW, these are not accessible spaces. These are cages.
No, they are not.
Right? And that's all they are. And you check in. Now, us poor people know this is nothing new. We know the whole Roach Motel protocol. You know, you check in, you're lucky to check out, right? So you check in at 7 p.m. and you don't get to leave until 7 a.m. Now, what's interesting is the way they're setting it up now, calling it a safe sanctuary. I love the terminology. I love the PR campaign by Mayor Breed. A safe sleeping village, right? That sounds all touching, right? Well, when we did the research out on the street the other day that some of you saw in the beginning with Sister Maria and other Ruthless Radio reporters, they were like, this is jail. First of all, they do an ID check to come in. They have you on a parking lot. Let's get clear about that. If you don't, have a tent, you're right on the actual cement, not even the asphalt. And they're doing police checks every night. So basically, making sure people don't got what, this and that and the other, right? So what was happening is basically, the quote unquote good homeless, and there's all that mess. I know you know what I mean by that ish, right? Who play, because we're colonized, we go along. And sometimes that also means that we don't have another place to be. That's real. But anyway, so they're doing this weird pitting against poor against the poor, and saying, well, those guys can come in, but these guys can't. So what do you got? You got a bigger group of people outside the so-called sanctuary, air quotes. Anyway, it's just mind-befuddling.
Just really quick to add on to that too, just for everybody who's an activist, this Hotel Kowski, whatever the hell it's called, thing sounds great. Because we are a union, and the homeless union is run by the unhoused, and we've organized all these camps, and we have people going in from the unions into these to these hotels. You need to watch your people in these hotels. The conditions aren't great, and the rules are not great. We have people basically starving and hungry. We've gotten screenshots or pictures of food. So in Sacramento, they're paying restaurants right now to feed our seniors. They're also kind of doing the same type of thing for the unhoused in these hotels. They're paying like $9,000 a week for 3 meals, and it was like a bagel and a hard-boiled egg.
What?
And we have people that are coming out of hospitals. We have people that are sick. We have the seniors. We have all these different elements, and they're getting these very small amounts of food. The rules here in Sacramento, like I said, I don't know if this is everywhere. In Sacramento, they're only allowed to leave for 30 minutes. So that means they can't even get to a store and back. No vehicles, no transportation, and they're getting booted out.
Wow.
So we're seeing that. They're also not placing people in housing quick enough, which I didn't add this. This is part of the reason we're filing this lawsuit, is because what they're saying is we have one transport. So they're housing 2 people per day because they have one thing to, cage off the driver. However, we've been able to now place full-size buses, which gives you that 6-foot distance for Wi-Fi. They've placed them all over Sacramento. So these are things you need to watch the people that are going in. A lot of the people in our camps are very fearful that they're going to just disappear.
Wow.
And that this is their ploy to get them away from everybody.
Oh, yeah. I just want to bring in our brothers from the inside of the razor wire plantation cages, Joy Villarreal, Minister King William. We know that these, the biggest public housing in occupied Turtle Island is these prisons and jails. So these aren't different. It's a slow drip in, right? We also know that when you're on the street, you get citations for the act of being houseless. So again, lifting up and connecting the dots. Also, our indigenous babies from the other side of the false borders, which Bruce spoke on, and we saw, myself and my son in Arizona and New Mexico, and we lifting up Dene relatives, Cleveland out in, so-called Flagstaff. So the same ish that Joe Arpaio did to houseless folks in Phoenix is what he did and perpetrated to Migrante Raza when they crossed the false borders. So these our folks, we're all connected. Let's not start the parsing out of, the oppression politics, because actually, as Bruce pointed out, these are where they all want us all in, right?
And also on disabled children have been in cages since God knows when.
Thank you.
Especially children with autism, they stick them in cages. And these are wealthy, middle-class parents,
Can I ask each of the participants in the chat right now to put your contact information? Us talking to each other is an act of liberation. Powerful work from Pnn-Kexu, powerful work from Do No Harm, powerful work from Sister Samsara, and us here at Homefulness, we're building our own. F the politricksters. Us poor people can actually build our own land liberation and unsell Mama Earth. And I want to lift that up as well. Where do we go, Berkeley? First they came for the homeless, all of the other land liberation movements that refuse to continue to say that the only solution is the government dough and the fake ass, government hoe.
Yeah, and Bruce is doing it too, right?
Right, Bruce out there in Tennessee.
Big shout out to Bruce and Barbara Wright from Refuge Ministries in Tennessee.
Thank you.
Right. I just want to also shout out to the beautiful Western Alvarez, who's helped us today, because our digitally divided ghetto asses could not figure out how to share a screen. But thanks to beautiful Weston, who has actually been a tech person and helping us, and is also helping with Poor People's Radio. The last thing we want to bring up before we close out is Decolonize, which is written by our youth scholars, and actually included the beautiful, powerful work of poverty scholars from Turtle Island, aka occupied Seminole territory, occupied Uchin, right here in Decolonize number 13. There's Dee's poem. There's work from Barbara Wright, from Crown Dion, when we went out there and shared the Medicine of Poverty Scholarship. So, support the youth. These are youth who are houseless and formerly houseless also, who are putting together their own media, because we already know these government politicians have nothing to teach us. We just need to make sure we take back Mama Earth. I also want to thank everybody for being on the show. And then Leroy, can you talk about the next Sunday, the next show that we're gonna do?
Yeah, so next Sunday is gonna be on next Sunday. And it's also gonna be our book launch for our COVID resource book that we put together. It's a kick-ass resource book by and for poor people, by poor activists. So we're going to do that next Sunday, same time, same back channel.
It's going to include Dr. Rupa, Dee, Sherry Honkala, so many more folks. There's powerful work in there. But right now we're going to be printing several hundred copies to also give away for free from occupied Lenape territory to occupied Uchin. Because, like we say, change won't come from a savior, a pimp, or an institution. Change will only come from a poor people-led revolution. So that's what's up. If everybody can put their information for folks to know, we'll also be recording. We recorded this tonight. We'll be putting it on PoorNewsNetwork channel on YouTube, and making sure that we keep talking to each other, because that is the liberation. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Rupa. Thank you, Samsara. Thank you to our beautiful guests, Laksh, and Monica Ferrez there, and Jeremy. Thank you, Weston, for saving our Getro asses. And thank you,
Weston.
Thank you to Dee and Mutiado and Leroy. And I think we're out, family.
All right, peace, people.
Peace. Power to the people.
Thank you, Tiny.
Thank you.
Good night, Tiny. Thank you. Good night, all.
Love you,
Good night,
Crystal.
all.
Talk to you
Thank you.
soon.
For sure.
All right.